Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the program, wherever you are geographically, wherever you are spiritually, mentally, physically. We welcome you. This is the Afro-Euro Reco12 podcast, where we bring together fellows, whoever covered through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. We welcome you no matter what your fellowship, what your addiction, what your affliction. We think that the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous provides a solution. So here we are. If you're interested in hearing our recordings, you could go to Reco12.com. There you'll find recordings from fellows in Gamblers Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, Codependents Anonymous, Sex and Love Addicts, just to name a few. So whether you're a hoarder, a workaholic, an anorexic, a bulimic, an overeater, undereater, what else? Geez. Emotions Anonymous. I've heard others too. Adult, child, Al-Anon, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We hope you'll hear someone that's got a message that resonates with you. If you would like to share, I want you, we want you. While this meeting is intimate live, over 350 recordings are heard and downloaded around the world every day, and you don't know, your message just might help someone. If you'd like to contribute a seventh tradition, you could do so by going to Reco12.com/support. It is my honor and my privilege to invite my personal friend and fellow, Emma D from England, to share her experience, strength, and hope with you today. Emma is a fellow who rigorously works the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous for years, through high spots and low, one day at a time. And I'm so proud for her to introduce herself, share her experience, strength, and hope. Emma, I'll give you about 30 minutes. Throughout the chat, folks, please pop your questions in the chat. And then, Emma, I'll just let you handle them afterwards. If we have no questions, I may suggest a few, but I really encourage you guys to ask your questions and have them answered, because Emma's got a lot of experience and she works with a lot of other fellows, paying it forward, living in 10, 11, and 12, one day at a time. Emma, so great to have you. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen, for asking me. So before I do any chatting, this is a tip I've picked up through meetings. I'll do the set aside prayer. So God, today help me set aside everything I think I know about you, everything I think I know about myself, everything I think I know about others, and everything I think I know about my own recovery, so I may have a mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help me see the truth. So I introduced myself as a recovered alcoholic. That tends to get a lot of people's backs up in meetings that I go to. But that's what I am today. It says it in the book. So I came into the rooms of AA in June 24th, 2022. Battered, broken, not thinking I was an alcoholic, thinking that I was probably mentally insane and needed locking up because of that, which I'd been told time and time again from my ex-husband. I didn't think I was an alcoholic. I had a mother that was an alcoholic. I had a dad that was a functioning alcoholic, an adulterer. And I was not going to be like that when I grew up. I was, I had an education, I had a good career, I was sporty. How does that match in with the image of a drunk sat on the park bench with his trousers tied up with string, which is, even though I had my mum that was an alcoholic who didn't look like that, that's what my image was. And I didn't know I had the ism until I got into these rooms. All of my drinking in the past was a lot. but I still didn't think it was a problem because I hadn't had massive consequences. Playing sport, I played for sport at a high level. That's what everyone did after a match. You know, we went to the club, we drank, we did silly things. That never stopped for me. I managed to put the drink down while I got married and while I had children and while life was good. I think that was the key for me. While life was good and while I had things or people to keep me distracted or on track, I managed to get away with my, where I thought I was a party girl, you know, just wanted to have fun. I just want to have fun. People around me would egg me on. People around me would, you know, dare me. I would, you know, jump into the back of running cars for a dare, thinking it was fun. There was no consequences, really. I missed my A-level exams because the night before I'd been out drinking. I'd jumped over a fence and they got spiked in my bum cheek. Not really a consequence. I still got to sit my A-level. Another exam, I turned up at the wrong time. I still got some A-levels. I went to university. You know, that's what everybody did at university. Everybody drank. Everyone did silly things. I was with my tribe. I got a job, had a career, and I didn't drink during, you know, I was a teacher, a lecturer in sport, so I didn't drink. I think I was scared. So I had enough willpower and I had some fear that if I drank and I had a hangover and I was sick, I would lose my job. I had enough of self-will to not drink at those times. And I think it was when I got divorced from my husband was when my drinking went to its next level. I'd been with my husband for 20 years, fully monogamous. And then I found dating sites, internet dating, and I was off. People were paying me attention. People were making me feel good. And I was drinking and I was taking drugs. And then the consequences started coming. I would get into blackout, which before I came into the rooms, I thought blackout was, I knew at the end of my drinking binge, I would be sick. I'd have my head in the toilet. I would be passing out. I would, you know, black eye, you know, bust up face. That was my blackout, what I thought. What I didn't realise that a blackout was meant I lost hours in the evening. So when I would go out, and my children were, you know, teenagers at this time, so, you know, legally I could leave them, and I was only going out for a couple of hours. You know, I believed that every time I said I'd be back at 10 or I'd be back at 12, or even if I knew I was going out a bit later, don't lock the doors, I will be home. And I believed that every single time I said that to my children. My children didn't, obviously. They knew I was, they thought I was a liar. But if you'd put a lie detector test on me, I would have passed that flying colours before going out. I am coming home to my children, to my babies who mean the world to me. And then I didn't. And it'd be 6 a.m. and I would think, what sort of person forgets to go home, that they forget they've got children at home waiting for them? And the guilt and shame that came with that is what nearly destroyed me. I didn't want to die, but I just didn't know how to carry on living like this, letting my children down and not understanding, why have I done it again? I've done it again. So the guilt and shame took me to, I tried to hang myself. Luckily, God had a different plan for me. And then I reached out for help. I got myself into the rooms of...
Why are you on a meeting this early?
Is that Chester?
Oh God, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I found myself in the rooms of recovery and I never looked back. I walked in, not knowing what to expect, not even thinking I was an alcoholic, but I was ready to try anything. And I was welcomed with open arms, with kind words, with stories that were so similar to mine. And that first meeting, which was an AA meeting, just gave me hope. It gave me hope. And I realised maybe I'm not mentally insane. Maybe I'm not the worst person in the world. But that was a journey for me. That took me a long time to work through that guilt and work through the shame. And the hate that got me in there. I walked into the rooms full of hate, hating my ex-husband for what he'd done, hating my ex-husband for what he'd said about me. He turned the children against me, and I was planning his death. I was planning in the AA meetings, telling everyone how I was going to kill him, how I was going to rip him open and pull his intestines out. And if I go to prison, then so be it. But I'm going to kill that man. Full of anger. And I was a complete victim. It wasn't my fault. If you was married to a man like that, you'd drink. If you'd had parents like me, you'd drink. If you'd had these traumas in your life, you'd drink. And I did not think for 1 minute that I was selfish or self-seeking. I was a victim. Yeah, I'm a victim. And I'm proud to be a victim because things have happened to me. I couldn't see what I'd done to others. So when I looked at those 12 steps, those instructions on the wall, I absolutely breathed a sigh of relief that no longer did I have to run my own life. No longer did I have to try to run a life that was chaotic, full of chaos. I found a sponsor straight away and started working the steps. And in my early days, I couldn't even read the book because I was that battered and broken. She'd have to read it to me line by line, page by page, giving me lots of patience and giving me lots of tolerance because I'd not turn up to meetings because I felt I was precious. I thought I was something special. But she persevered with me and took me through the steps. And, you know, day by day, I got a little bit stronger. But even in the rooms, it wasn't bright, you know, it wasn't bright and breezy. I'd even go into the rooms and listen to people sharing what supportive families they had. And I didn't have supportive family. My ex-husband was a narcissist. You know, he badmouthed me to the children. People in the rooms that had supportive children, I hated them. I hated them with a passion. But what about me? Poor old me. Nobody loves me. Nobody's being nice to me. And it really took a lot of time listening to old timers with 12, 15, 30 years sobriety. I hate you. I've got a week, sober, and I was very poorly. I wasn't happy. I wasn't joyous. I definitely wasn't free, but I persevered because I knew I didn't want to go back to the life that I was leading. So I worked the steps, and typical addict as I am, you know, I worked the steps. My sponsor told me you can't sponsor for 2 years. And I got a resentment against her. I started sponsoring, and as that typical addict, I thought I can sponsor 5 people at once. Because I now knew I had the answer. I ended up in hospital because I was poorly with my mental health. And God was teaching me a lesson. Working through the steps. Step 1, I knew I was powerless over alcohol. I knew my life was unmanageable. That was a given. I turned my life over to something that was greater than me. And for all my life, I thought I was the higher power. I thought I was God. I didn't need help. I didn't need advice. I didn't need guidance. And if you tried to tell me in the past, you would be shot down. Usually at the end of a headbutt. But today it's not like that. I turn my life over to a higher power, and my higher power is God. I always had him in my life, and I thought that was easy. I've got God. Those people that don't believe in God, what's wrong with you? Just believe in God. But step 3 was my difficult step. You know, every day, turn my life over to God. Step 3, prayer, easy. Thy will, not mine. I can say those words, but putting it into my daily routine. I got my children back, which was, life beyond my wildest dreams. All I wanted in recovery was getting my children back. But surprise, surprise, when I got them back, they didn't open up the red carpet. The trumpets and fanfares weren't playing. They hated me, and for good reason. I'd been a bad mum. But I was sick, and I realised that today. I realised that I'm sick. I realised that I've got an illness. I realised that I can't do this on my own. And that's the joy of this programme. I don't have to do it on my own. But sticking in step 3, turn your will and your life over to God. I was doing it on my knees, sometimes 15 times a day. And I would grab back my self-will. My children would misbehave. Those children that I worshipped and I wanted back, if they badmouthed me or they didn't do what I told them to do, guess what? I didn't like it. So that my step 3 is my crux, but it's also the thing that brings me joy. I know God has a plan for me. I know that He didn't want me to hang that day nearly 3 years ago. And this program isn't easy. It's simple. It's simple. 12 steps. Follow it. Work the 12 steps. Go to meetings and get some good recovery. I used to put a target on my back, which I was told to go into meetings that were sick. Put a target on your back. Say that you are recovered. It's going to ruffle feathers. And I did that, and I would try and preach the big book. The big book says this is what you need to do. Still learning, still young in sobriety. So I know I can't control anyone. I know there's only one powerful God. I go and I will say my story, my experience, my strength and hope, but also my struggle. Sobriety isn't always easy. I have 2 children, one who's got autism, and I love cuddles. I love being tactile. He doesn't, And why would you not want to hug your mum? I'm a lovely person. I'm a loving mum. Hug me, love me. That's not his love language. So I have to work on that every day. And, some days we move forward with that and some days we go 10 times back. But I have to be okay with that. My children are God's children. They're not mine. What's going to happen is going to happen. And if they're screaming and shouting at me, I have to walk away. I have to walk away and I have to pause. Pause when agitated is what is getting tattooed on my hand here, because every day in recovery, I still need that to remember that I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I am a member of this fellowship where I can't do this on my own. And if I try and take my self-will back, things don't go to plan. Things don't go well. So that is what I do today. I do sponsor and I work the workbook of sponsorship set up by Cameron, which means I can take a lot more people through the steps. It works if you work it. It doesn't if you don't. This book was written in the 1930s. And yes, in my early recovery, I thought I could rewrite it. Set in the 1930s, this is out of date. I'm going to make it better. Today I know I don't need to do that. This book is written and it's still standing because it works. I know my message, my journey is to tell my experience, strength and hope to other women that have been through similar things to me. I have a home group. I'm also, I go on Nikki Noodle every Monday because the sobriety is strong on there. It's radical. And sometimes I hear things I don't want to hear. But it's a reminder every day that, I get to keep my sobriety just for 24 hours. And if I don't do my prayers, if I don't do my meditation, if I don't work these principles in all of my affairs, if I don't sponsor, I am going to be back in that shower with trying to hang myself. And that's not what I want. So in order to keep this sobriety, that's what I do. And I appreciate it. It's tough. You know, people have their own way of recovery, and today I let them do it in their way. You know, the statistics aren't good. I think it's 2 in every 10 of us get it. I want to be one of those 2. You know, I sponsor people, I sponsor ladies, and I make mistakes. The difference is today I'm okay with that. Today I'm okay with making mistakes because I'm human. I didn't think I was before. I thought I was superhuman. I thought Emma doesn't make mistakes. Emma can tell everyone what to do. And I'm still reminded by sponsees daily sometimes, you know, wind your neck in, Emma. And I'm okay with that. I have to let people work it at their level, how they want to work it. So is that okay, Karen? I think I'm going to leave it there.
It's more than okay. It's amazing. Thank you. Hold on, I have a little bit of sun where I am. Yeah. I, for one, really needed to hear what you said about the kids, and I heard a lot about, you know, you sharing your recovery journey, and between the lines, I'm hearing a lot of to the wives, a lot of, you know, the family afterwards, you know, living with an addict would make a neurotic out of anyone. So I really related to that. Like, why isn't my daughter hugging me? Why don't my kids want to hang out with me? You know, hearing it through my own lens of codependency. I hope everyone on the line heard it through whatever, you know, afflicts them, whether it's, you know, a marital relation, a parenting relation. If you're a parent, it's always really good to be in touch with another parent in recovery, you know, what it was like and how it is, and how you survive that when you realize the damage you've done and that it's not all peaches and cream. I heard what you said about you don't want to be in the shower hanging yourself, which of course, you know, the big book talks about that. If we don't work the spiritual program, it means insanity or death. You know, we're at the jumping off point. You know, it could be the jumping off point to be rocketed into the 4th dimension, or alternately, it could be jumping off a cliff and taking your life. And I just want to say, because I'm on holiday here in Jerusalem and all my kids are home, and, you know, my kids are, you know, the children of alcoholic. And I'm not a literal alcoholic, by the way. I'm just a coda and overeater. I don't do booze. But sometimes things get hairy, even for those of us who are recovered. It gets really hairy, but we're always at that jumping off point where we could jump off the cliff or jump back into our program. It's never too late. You know, I promise you, you know, Emma has a illustrious history and resume of trauma and drama and all that. I've got one that, you know, can compete with that. And I'm sure there are several people on the line here and around the world who could do a good tap dance that will outshine all of us put together, right? We've all got our gruesome stories, and then some of us have less gruesome stories. But it's never too late. It's never too late to pick up the simple program of action. And if you've been doing that, if you've been sponsoring and you still had a slip or a fall, you can double up your spiritual program. And it works. It really does. Does anybody have some questions that they want to put in the chat? Emma's got a lot to share about being a parent in recovery, about working with others, about, you know, having a strong program, you know, letting up and then redoubling it again. I know that from her personally. Any questions anyone would like to put in the chat? I'll give it a second, and if not, I'll ask some questions. Okay, great. I see a question in here. Will you handle that? Acceptance and kids, amends to kids. Great. We have a bunch of questions. Just look at the chat, Emma, and you take them at your own pace.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
Okay, yeah, so we'll talk about acceptance in kids and amend to kids. So yes, acceptance, yeah, page 417. I had to read that a lot. Acceptance. I have acceptance today that I have the disease of alcoholism. I'm not picking up a drink today. I'm not picking up a drug. I'm not picking up men. I'm trying not to pick up my self-will on a daily basis. And acceptance, I found acceptance the easy bit. The easy bit was I was so busted and broken and battered that I was ready to accept anything. So the acceptance part wasn't difficult to me. Where I struggled with the acceptance, around my kids today, is I have to accept, just because I've got a 12-step recovery program and I've had a spiritual experience after completing these 12 steps, and I live a spiritual life. My kids don't. They don't have a program. They're not interested in going to Al-Anon. My son with autism, he doesn't want to talk about it. He doesn't want to talk to me. I want him to talk to me. I want to tell him what I want him to tell me how he feels. That's not him. He doesn't do that. He doesn't want to do that. Today, I have to have acceptance on that. My daughter, on the other hand, she's the opposite. She loves to blame, and she's had a lot of trauma in her life. And yes, I wasn't the parent she needed at that moment in time. I wasn't the parent that was there. I put drink and drugs and men before my children. And I have to accept today that that's not okay with my children. Yes, they see that I'm acting completely different today, but they're not ready to forgive me fully. I have them back in my life. My son lives with me. My daughter, we've recently moved. We've recently moved, and the children came with me, and that was an absolute blessing. I knew my 16-year-old son was coming. I wasn't sure whether my 20-year-old daughter was going to come, because she hated me. And day to day with the children, it is really tough. I have to accept this daily. I make daily amends. I've said my sorries. They don't want to hear sorry. They heard sorry over and over again for a couple of years. Nothing changed. So I have to be willing, and I have to wait till they're ready. And it's really tough when they're calling me names, or when I'm trying to parent. I'm trying to show my authority. I can't have authority. And I have to be really careful who I talk to, because if I talk to women or parents outside of recovery, they will, they can show their authority. They can be strict, and they can be however they want. I can't in recovery. I know that my children belong to God. And at times where, my son will be kicking off, he'll be smashing up his room, he'll be rude to me, he'll be vulgar to me, I have to walk away and let him calm down. And that is the bit for me is tough. But I have to remember I'm making my amends daily to my children. And that's how I have to be. Several times a day, I'll be on my knees, pray to God, thy will be done, thy will be done, God's will, not mine, God's will. how can I be of service to God? But how can I be of service to my children? Okay, they're going to be, they're going to be mean to me. They're going to say mean words to me. I have to take that. Amends to my kids. I'm home to cook tea for my son every day, most days. And if I'm not, he knows what's happening. I don't disappear. That's what I can do today. I can tell my son where I'm going to be. He can get hold of me at any time of the day. And that's what I have to do. I hope that answers your question. The next question, how do you find the balance between recovery, parenting?
Can I stop you on something you said quickly?
You can, yes.
You said your kids are going to say mean words to you.
Yeah.
I have actually 2 questions on that. What do you do? What do you do when you're hurt? What do you do when you want to cry? Because I sometimes find that happens, and I just start crying or bawling in this, and then I'm like, oh well, that wasn't helpful for them to see a messed up mother. But what do you do?
So yeah, sometimes I do. I am an emotional person, and actually I've just come off medication. I'm on no medication now. For 13 years I've been on lots, so that I am free from all mind-altering substances, and that is tough. So when my children say mean things to me, yes, sometimes I do cry, because it hurts my feelings, and because I know I'm not a bad person, but that's what my children are going to say to me, and that's okay. Sometimes I do break down and cry. Sometimes I do shout and lose it, but then I walk away. Normally what I'll do is I will, if they're shouting and they're big kids now, they want to go for me, and I have to leave the house. I'll either get in my car. I've moved. I'm very close to the beach. I can go and sit on the beach. I can have a good cry. I can get in that sea that freezes my brain and gets me back into reality. I can, come back and I can apologise, because that's what I have to do. I don't have the luxury of other people that aren't in recovery. I don't have the luxury of being self-righteous. I don't have the luxury of false pride, and that is really tough. But that is what I do. I'll leave the room. I'll leave them screaming, shouting. I go away and I'll pause. I have to pause a lot. And then I'll come back and I'll make amends to them. And then if they want to talk, and we'll talk about, maybe what the right thing to do is, and it's not okay to talk to people in that way. But at the moment, that is where I am, one day at a time.
Hey Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
One other question. I was going to ask, what do you do when you feel hurt? Oh, how do you find the line? I think some of your children may be younger, between letting go absolutely, ceasing fighting everyone and everything, and then you are responsible as a parent to guide them and teach them. I mean, I guess you just answered that a little bit, that you kind of bring it up when times are calm, not in the heat of the moment. But what, how do you handle that?
Every day's a learning day, Karen. I don't have the answers. I have to go to God. And I know I don't have all the answers. That's all I can say. I very often, I know I have a problem. Both my children smoke weed, and I'm really, that it doesn't feel right. And I'm working on I have to work on something different all the time. I'll put in some boundaries. They don't work. They get pushed away. I then try something else. If that doesn't work, I try something else. My children are safe today. Yes, I don't agree with them smoking weed. They argue that's their medicine, but I have to work it in their time. I have to work it in their time. In the past, both my children took other drugs as well. You know, my son would leave the house. He would be involved in shoplifting. We thought he was being groomed for drug running. It isn't like that today. He doesn't, it's the opposite now. He doesn't leave the house. And that has its own issues. But I deal with it on a daily basis rather than, oh my God, my son's not done his exams. Oh my God, my son's not at school. I have to be okay with that. Everyone's journey is different. My son's journey is different to my best friend's son. And it's just trusting in God. Trusting God. God has got a plan for me. God's got a plan for my children. It might not be what I want. I definitely don't like them smoking weed, but I'm more okay with them smoking weed than they are going shoplifting, running out of the house in early hours of the morning when I don't know where they are, getting into cars who I don't know. So today, I'm okay with that. Is that okay, Karen?
Thank you. Go ahead and take the next.
Okay. So, how do you find the balance between recovery, parenting, self-care, and just life in general? So yeah, I struggle with this. I am, so my recovery comes first. It has to come first. And getting that balance right with parenting is still a struggle, because I used to go to meetings, 2 or 3 meetings a day to begin with. And I had to do that to get well. Today it's less. I go to less face-to-face meetings. I do Zoom meetings, which means I can be at home more. And even when I'm sponsoring, like I said earlier on, sometimes I was sponsoring 5 people at a time because that's what I needed. No, Emma, you're now not getting the balance right. So I'm still working on that with sponsees. I've got 3, sometimes 4 on the go at a time, but I make sure I don't go out of the house too often. I stay at home. My son knows where I am. Self-care, I had to move from the area where we were. I was very isolated. It was where my ex-husband was. Had a lot of friends in recovery, so it was hard leaving, but I've moved to an area, it's where my family live. And that's a blessing in itself, because I left this town. I left Skegness when I was 16, never to return. I'm here 35 years later, 30 years later. Back, I've forgiven my family. I've forgiven my mum. I've forgiven my dad. I've forgiven people. And I've also made amends. I'm lucky that I live near a beach. So self-care for me is I go for cold dips in the morning. I'll go for a walk on the beach. I'll go to the gym. Going for a coffee and a cake is what I did for the best part of my early recovery. I'm now addicted to sugar, but I'm dealing with that because it's not going to kill me. And yeah, life in general. I was very resentful with people that went to work, you know, were working, that held the family together, that kept the house, that kept the job. I couldn't do that. I am only just going back to work now, to, you know, nearly 3 years into recovery. And that's my story, you know. I used to get angry with people. You're not putting your recovery first, you're going to relapse. I'm not in control of that. But I know for me, I had to not go to work, because I needed to put my recovery first, and I needed to get my children back, and I needed to get my mental health back into check. So for me, and I hated that. I hated that I wasn't able to go back to work and earn lots of money. But I am okay with that today. And now I am just, you know, nearly 3 years sober. I am just getting back into work. So I had to put my recovery and my children and my mental health first above going back to work. So I could go for walks on the beach. So I could go and meet recovery friends for cake and coffee. So I could lie in bed when I needed to, or sit on the sofa and watch rubbish TV because I wasn't feeling mentally strong. And that is what I needed. You know, today I'm back in the gym, I'm getting up early, I'm going on the beach and praying, and I'm getting back to work. So it's everyone's different, and I will never judge today, because that being judgy, I was judge and jury and executioner. So that's how I juggle it today. Okay, Karen. So shall I move on to the next question? Can you speak about the difference between self-pity and grief, and how you got out self-pity and into grieving and acceptance? So yes, I was full of self-pity. And that was hard to begin with. And I was a victim. You know, I was a victim of being married to a narcissistic husband. I was a victim of being a daughter of an alcoholic mum and a adultering father. And I had to grieve that. I thought my marriage was there was no problems with it. One day I lost it all. And it wasn't through the drinking, it was through my mental health. My husband didn't want to live life with someone that struggled with mental health, and I find that hard. How dare somebody be like that? And I did. I had to grieve, and that is where I think the first 12 to 18 months of my recovery, I was grieving, and I had to be kind to myself, and I needed to surround myself with people that were loving and caring and not judging. And that's what I did. I found people in recovery, not outside of recovery. I had to cut off everybody. I cut off all our joint friends, because I hated them too. You know what my husband is and what he's done to me and the children. Why are you still friends with him? I wanted them. Even though the things, you know, I'd done some pretty disgusting things, low life things. But my morals were still high. You know, I would not treat you like that. I would not treat my best friend like that. In fact, I would kill for my best friends. So why wouldn't they do that for me? So yeah, I had to grieve, and I allowed myself to grieve. I didn't go back to work. I ate cake. I went to meetings. I watched rubbish movies. I slept a lot. And I, for the first time in my life in recovery, I started to be easy on myself, and not be judgmental, and not have high expectations or high standards, and that became easier. And so that the further I went through the steps, so definitely after step 4 and 5, that was my big eye opener. Looking at where I was to blame, and taking responsibility for that. You know, I was selfish, I was self-seeking, I was full of ego, I was full of self-pride, false pride. I was full of anger. How was I going to forgive a man? I had to look where I was to blame. Where had I gone wrong? And I had to say the sick man prayer over and over again for lots of people. They were sick too. So that's how I deal with that. That's how I deal with that. And yeah, acceptance is massive. My book opens on page 417 because I had to read it. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. And also resentment and anger is the number one offender. I would read those over and over again. I don't want that. I don't want to be full of resentment. I don't want to not have acceptance around that. So I would read it and read it. Yeah, there's a question here on how you do your step 10 and 11. So very mechanical to start with. I work, if you've just joined and not heard, I do the workbook, the Cameron F's workbook of sponsorship. So in there is a paper version of a step 10. I also have I'm on a group on WhatsApp, and a WhatsApp group for step 10. And so, yeah, mechanically to start with, I will write down at the end of the day, have I been resentful? Have I been selfish? Have I been self-seeking? Do I need to make an amends? And I did start it to start with. And then that's it's making amends on the spot. I couldn't do that to start with because my mind was so full of fog. It would get to the end of, this is what I need to do tomorrow. And that's how I would do it. Sometimes I wasn't willing to make an amends. So I would journal about it. I would talk about it in meetings. I would talk about it to my sponsor. If in doubt, anything, I would pick up the phone to my sponsor or my God Squad. You know, it talks about having people around you that have got good sobriety that can pull you up if you aren't saying the right things or acting godly.
Hey, Reco12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Reco12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at reco12.com/support or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Reco12 Spearhead.
No, not now. I'll be up soon. I'll give you food soon. I'll be up soon. I just lost it.
So that's how I work my step 10. Step 10 and 11. It's daily. I could never say sorry to anybody, even if I was never wrong. I was never wrong. So there was nothing to but today I can. And I find myself giggling now. If I've said, if I've got them on,
Better wants to see like you sing. I'm very good at it.
got the mic on. Can you mute yourself, please? So I giggle today. If I need to make an amends, it's like, oh, Emma, you've done something wrong. You know, slap on the wrist, and I'll make amends. And I think I've gone full circle with that. If I'm wrong, I can admit it today. Like I would never do that in the past. Is that okay? let's have a look at some other questions. Was my spiritual awakening sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly? So yeah, in the madness, I would be. I got took out of society. I was took out of my home in early recovery. My mum, who I'd hated all my life, how dare you drink? How dare you put drink and my dad and men before me? This woman who I hated, when I was on my knees and needed it, she came and scooped me up. She became the mother that I needed. So I was on Skegness Beach daily, walking, looking for my spiritual awakening. I'd see seals in the sea. Is that a message from God? What does that mean? Cloud formations. Is that God telling me so? What does that mean, God? And I would like, what? When am I going to have my spiritual awakening? I think I definitely had my spiritual awakening happened, or I had an experience the day I walked into the rooms of AA. Something definitely changed in me. And I think that was acceptance. I know I'm not like everybody else out there. And it was a relief for me. So I definitely had a spiritual awakening early on. But after doing those 12 steps, and when I take sponsees through, it's like looking in a mirror. When I'm talking to sponsees about something that they're struggling with, either it's something that I've been through myself, or I'm also currently going through. My sponsor told me men was an issue for me as well. And I was told, don't go dating, stay away from men. So and I did that because I didn't want to go back out. I knew if I picked up a drink or a drug again that I would be dead. There was no two ways about that. So I had to do everything that was told. And I know it doesn't say it in the book, that we're not the arbiter of people's sex conduct, but my sponsor knew a lot about me, and she told me to stay away from the men for a year. I did it. So do I say it to my sponsees? Yes, only if men is an issue. And at the end of the day, it's up to them. But yes, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly. Yeah, I tell my sponsees, stay away from men. I did stay away from men for the first 2 years. Then when then I was like, God's ready for me to have a man in my life. I picked the wrong one. I picked the wrong man. And I was quickly reminded that he was the wrong man. And I was able, because I had recovery, I could work with that. I could deal with it. I hadn't let it destroy me. So yeah, I use my experiences. I only sponsor women now because of that. Because I think my latest sponsor, she tells me that I hate men. I didn't believe that. I thought I loved men. So I don't sponsor men today. And yeah, so that's the sometimes slowly. The quickly, yes, I know I had a spiritual experience as soon as I walked in the rooms of recovery. I knew I was home. I knew these were my people. And even though I hated some of them because of their length of sobriety, or them there was someone used to say, I'm on my pink fluffy cloud, and I wanted to headbutt him. But I listened to it. So yeah, there's sometimes slowly, if I'm shouting at my kids and forget that I'm not in control. The men is the sometimes slowly. The sometimes quickly is I know that daily I have to work. I work these steps with every inch of my life. I pray, I meditate in the morning, even before I open my eyes. I mean, I laminated prayers, so I had them at the side of my bed. So I didn't open my phone because, guess what? This addict wants to scroll. Oh, I'll do my prayers. Oh, what's this happening? Let's have a look on Facebook. Let's have a look on Insta. So I ended up having to like laminate some prayers at the side of my bed. And even now, I'll open my eyes and it's, how can I best serve thee today? God's will, not mine. And that is, I don't need my laminate. I don't need my phone. I don't need my book, because there's some quick words that I can say.
Thank you so much. We can't thank you enough. It looks like Karen's off.
Okay.
Usually, if you have any words you want to end with, I got so much out of this I can't describe. May God bless you and help you continue with your beautiful recovery and have beautiful relationships with your kids and everyone.
Thank
if you'd
you.
like to pray us out or have any last words, then you feel free to do this. You can pray us out with a prayer of your choice. You can end with some words before. It's usually until 11, whatever's good for you. Thank you so much, Emma.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking me to share. Simple final words. It works if you work it. It won't if you don't. And I'll pray us out with the prayer of St. Francis. Lord, make me a channel of thy peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds. It is by forgiving that one is forgiven. It is by dying that one awakens to eternal life. Amen. Thank you for having me.
Amen. Thank you so much.
If anyone wants to reach out, I will put my name in the chat and my number. Have a wonderful day, and thank you for inviting me.
Thanks, Emma. Have a beautiful, blessed day. Thanks, everyone, for coming on. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.